Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so thin parallel film interference. So this was what we spoke about in the last class. We have a film which is of thickness T and is flanked on both sides by air, and we know refractive index of air is 1. Refractive index of the film is mu. So it is made up of a medium of some material with refractive index mu, obviously should be transparent. So examples are oil film, the surface of a soap bubble, etc. Maybe a very thin glass film, etc. Okay, so we can see there is multiple reflection within the film, and these reflected rays again move outside the film as reflected and transmitted rays. So, and we discussed in detail why we should consider only the first two rays for interference in the reflected mode, and similarly the first two rays for interference in the transmitted mode, because they are the ones which have closest intensity or amplitude, and we know that for obtaining proper observable interference pattern, the amplitudes of the interfering rays should be close, okay, near equal or nearly so. Okay, so and additionally in the reflected mode we have to keep in mind that the reflection is being backed by a denser medium, so that we have to incorporate the additional path difference of lambda by 2 according to Stokes law. Whereas in the transmitted mode, we don't have to bother about that, because experimentally it has not been proven that there is any additional phase difference or path difference in the transmitted when reflection is backed by a rarer medium. So, and the other very important thing about this is that these are fringes which are called localized fringes, because we can see that the interfering rays are parallel to each other. Okay, so we know that parallel rays meet at infinity. So we discussed this in last class. Then where do we keep our observing instrument? Okay, so we know that in order to converge parallel rays, we need to place a converging lens in their path so that they converge at the focus of the focal plane of this converging lens. So basically the lens of the observing instrument, or if we are watching it with our naked eyes, then the eye should be adjusted in such a manner that the rays converge to the focal plane of the observing lens. And hence we discuss this, that these fringes are formed only on the focal plane of the observing lens, nowhere else. You cannot just obtain fringes anywhere if you try to. So these are called localized fringes as compared to the other kind of fringes that we studied, that is the fringes made by division of wavefront, for example in Young's double slit experiment. Okay, We calculated the path difference. I will not go through the mathematics today. We had done it in detail in the last class. It is very simple trigonometry. You just have to identify the rays between which you are calculating the path difference, and keep in mind that the second ray, while traveling inside the medium, you have to consider its optical path, the optical path traveled by the ray inside the medium, and not just the geometrical distance. Okay, so applying some trivial trigonometry, we saw that the expression of the path difference between the interfering rays R1 and R2 is 2 mu t cos r. In addition to this, we have to apply Stokes' law, so that the final expression is 2 mu t cos r plus or minus lambda by 2. Okay, so once we know the path difference, we have to apply the condition of obtaining constructive or destructive interference. So the condition of brightness is obtained by equating delta to integral multiple of lambda, whereas the condition of, so this is what we get, whereas the condition of darkness is obtained by equating delta to an odd multiple of lambda by 2. Okay, so this is the condition. And then in the transmitted mode, I had asked you to do this for homework. I hope all of you have done this. If you have not, then please do it. It's just the same steps of trigonometry that we have done in the reflected mode. So I expect that all of you have done this. The result is already given. So this is what you will do in order to get the path difference between transmitted rays in the transmitted mode. Okay. So here we have to remember that there is no reflection back by a denser medium, hence Stokes' law need not be applied, and therefore the condition of brightness is simply delta equal to n lambda, giving you this, and the condition of darkness is this. And I showed you a table comparing the conditions of maxima and minima of the reflected and transmitted mode, which showed clearly that they are complementary to each other. So the positions of the bright fringes in the reflected mode will be those of dark fringes in the transmitted mode, and vice versa. So the reflected and transmitted mode are complementary to each other as seen from the expressions of their conditions of maxima and minima. Okay, and then we had elaborate discussions on the results. First of all, localized fringes, whereas fringes obtained in Young's double slit experiment, or for that matter any experiment where we obtain interference fringes by division of wavefront, they are non-localized. Okay, then the very important point that the path difference expression shows that the only variable parameter is r, which depends again on the angle of incidence, the angle at which the incident ray is inclined with respect to the normal. And so each such angle of incidence will give rise to a particular transmitted ray or reflected ray, and that will give you one particular value of delta, the path difference. Okay, so a given value of path difference is obtained for a set of rays that are inclined at the same angle to the normal, to the interface. Okay, so we call these the fringes of equal inclination. A single fringe is given rise by a set of rays which has the same inclination to the normal, and therefore they are called fringes of equal inclination, and we give a special name, that is localized fringes which are of equal inclination are called Heidinger fringes. So these fringes formed by interference due to division of amplitude in a thin parallel film has a special name. They are called Heidinger fringes because of their special characteristics. First of all, localized, and secondly, fringes of equal inclination. I made a very novice attempt to show you how all these rays, all these incident rays, which are inclined at the same angle to the normal, give rise to reflected rays, so that the locus lies on a circular path. Okay, so basically this shows us that the fringes will be circular in shape. All right, so Heidinger fringes or fringes of equal inclination are primarily circular in shape. Next, we discussed the effect of composite light and saw why oil films or soap bubbles are colored. We see colored fringes, circular colored fringes, but since they are not very specified experimental setups, so the fringes may not be well formed, but nevertheless we see them. Then we saw why in a very thick film such fringes are not formed. We saw what is the necessity of a broad source, what will happen if we have a point source. Okay. Finally, we saw that if it's an extremely thin film, a film that has thickness which is lesser than even the value of the wavelength of the incident light, then it will be observed as a a totally dark film. The film will as a whole appear dark. On the other hand, in the transmitted rays, since they are complementary, it will appear uniformly bright. Now, with this knowledge of parallel films, we will now move over to a slight complication, a slight modification to the parallel film. We will still discuss the reflection and transmission through a thin film. Only we will now consider that the film is wedge shaped. Okay, so this is what I mean by a wedge shaped film. The boundary are no longer parallel to each other, they meet at a point O. Okay, so this sky blue edge here is one boundary, and the other edge here is the other boundary, and within it is confined a medium which is now acting as the thin film. And again, this thin film is flanked by air on both sides for this particular experiment. Okay, so this, as I have indicated in the diagram is taken from the internet. This is the air wedge, and here we have the glass to air boundary, and here we have the air to glass boundary. Okay, so on both sides there is glass, and inside there is air. Okay, so in this case here, there is no pi change because reflection is backed by a rarer medium, whereas here there is a phase change of pi because of Stokes law, because here reflection is backed by a denser medium. So everything is indicated in the diagram. So I have just explained it. Thin film of varying thickness is called a wedge-shaped film. We have to remember that the most important difference between a thin parallel film and a thin wedge-shaped film is that in a thin parallel film, the value of the thickness is a constant. T is a constant, whereas here the thickness of the film will change. The thickness of the film is 0 where the two glass surfaces meet, and it is maximum at the opposite end. Okay, so usually the wedge angle plays a very important role, and here we name the wedge angle as theta, and the diffractive index of the enclosed medium is mu. So if we consider this figure, then this is an air wedge and it has refractive index 1. So in this particular case, we have a rarer medium flanked by denser media. On the other hand, we can think of a denser medium flanked by rarer media, where the enclosed medium will have refractive index mu. So next we will calculate path difference. So PQ and PQ and RS are two thin glass plates, very thin glass plates, so that they do not contribute to the shift of the ray, and they touch at the point P or R, as you may call it, to form a wedge-shaped film of angle theta. Okay, so this is our figure for the derivation part. For the derivation part, you will use this figure, please. Now, a ray AB is incident on PQ at the point P, and angle of incidence is I. And this ray is reflected along BR1. See, this is the reflected ray. And transmitted along BC. Please follow my cursor, everybody. The ray is reflected along BR1 and where is my cursor? Yes, BR1 and transmitted inside the film along BC. At the point BC, the ray is again reflected, okay, to the point D. So CD is the reflected ray inside the medium, and from D, it is again transmitted into air along the direction DR2. Okay. Now we have to find the path difference between BR1 and DR2. And in this case, you can see that they are no longer parallel. The rays that we will consider for interference are not parallel to each other. Okay, but they are diverging. And how do we make diverging rays meet? We extrapolate the rays backwards. Okay. So basically, we will have to extrapolate the rays BR1 and BR2 backwards to make them seem to diverge from a particular point. Okay. Now what we do is we drop a perpendicular from the point D onto BR1 at the point M, so that, you know, to calculate the path difference, you have to calculate the difference between mu into BC plus CD and BM. Okay, same argument as before, that while the first ray starts its journey from B towards R1, the second ray will travel inside the medium an optical path of BC plus CD into mu, and then it will start traveling in the direction of R2 so that the two rays interfere. Okay, so the path difference is mu into BC plus CD minus BM. Now I have done the calculation over here. I don't want to read through the calculation. It becomes very boring for both you and me. I have discussed the calculation in the first part, that is thin parallel film, and I think you should be able to follow this if you have followed that. You just have to follow the names, the angles, and see what trigonometrical relations I have used. Okay, I think it is very, since the figure is given and the names and all the steps are explicitly done, I think it is very redundant to discuss just this kind of a derivation in an online class. If I were working on a blackboard, I would have done it. But since this is an online class and the PPT is there, so I think you can go through this. Is that all right with all of you? Or do you want me to show you read out the steps to you one by one? Can I get a response from you? Can someone please unmute and respond whether you want me to read out the steps or you will be able to read them and follow? Yes?
একটুখানি টাচ করে করে বলে দিতে পারবে?
আচ্ছা, টাচ করে করে বলে দিচ্ছি। Okay. Okay, so the main point to note is that the rays BR1 and DR2, if you extrapolate them, they will appear to diverge from a certain point. Okay. Now, so that is how we obtain the superposition. Now, since the angle between the two plates, the wedge angle, is theta, if you consider the normals, see, the normal to the first plate and the normal to the second plate. If you follow my cursor, I have not named it somehow. So basically BK is the normal to the first plate and CK is the normal to the second plate, and as you can see they meet at the point K. So since the angle between the wedge surfaces is theta, so obviously the angle between their normals, the point at which the normals meet, is also theta. Okay, so BKC is also equal to theta, which is the wedge angle. All right, and angle KBC here, that is the angle of refraction, R. All right, so what we do is we extend BC to the point L. BC is extended to the point L, so that ছবিটা অস্পষ্ট মানে এটা তোমরা যদি যখন নিজেরা দেখবে, যদি একটু জুম করে দেখো তখন নিশ্চয়ই স্পষ্ট হয়ে যাবে, বা এটা দেখে দেখে যদি নিজেরা খাতায় এঁকে নাও তাহলে এটা স্পষ্ট হয়ে যাবে। এই মুহূর্তে আমি তো এখানে আর জুম করতে পারছি না, I don't have that option. Okay, so if you follow my cursor, okay, BC is extended to the point L so that CL is equal to CD, C and D, so CL equal to CD, and we join the points L and D. All right, so we take the triangle BKC, this triangle here, BKC, where the external angle is R plus theta. The external angle of this triangle, this is R, this is theta. So the external angle to this triangle is R plus theta. Again, TK is parallel to DL. This is TK and this is DL. So TK is parallel to DL, so that angle CLO, this is also equal to R plus theta, and angle CDO is also equal to R plus theta. I mean, I can do the reading out, but I don't know whether it will be, whether you will be follow it like this. I think the best method is that when I send this PPT to you, you draw the figure on a paper by yourself, name it as I have done, and then follow the steps one by one to see that the result is what we get at the end. Okay, so the rest of it is again, just geometry. You have to take triangle BDM, this triangle here. Okay, name the angles, so you get a value of sin I. Then you have to take triangle BDN. All right, see, this is N, so BDN, this point is N. So you have to take triangle BDN. It is written over here, the normal DN is drawn from D on BL. So again you get an expression for sin R. Okay, so you apply Snell's law and you get a relation between BM and BN. BM and BN. This is BN. Okay, so the path difference, which is mu into BC plus CD minus BM, so you substitute the expressions of these. BC plus CD is basically BL, and you have BN minus mu BN. So basically finally you get delta is mu into NL. Okay, again you have another triangle from which you get an expression for NL, and finally you get the path difference to be 2 mu t cos of theta plus R. Okay, so আবারও বলছি, এখানে আমি জানি এই ছবিটা একটু অস্পষ্ট। My suggestion is that after the class you sit with a paper and pen, draw the figure, look at this slide, take your time, draw the figure, follow the steps right from here to here, see how I have named the angles. I think you are smart enough to name the angles accordingly, see the relations, which the value of all the angles have been given, from which the value of sin I as sin r have been calculated, and finally substituting we get the value of the path difference to be 2 mu t cos of r plus theta. So this is trigonometry. You can do it. I assure you, you can do it once you draw the figure and follow the steps. Let us discuss what comes after this. What is the consequence of the path difference? Okay. First of all, you can see that you can see that, okay, so Ria ma'am wants to take a class, and I will be, I think I'll set you free by 1. Okay, so I'll just write that. Okay, so as you can see that the path difference in the parallel film case was 2 mu t cos r. Okay, and here we have only one additional parameter, that is 2 mu t cos of r plus theta. All right, so the wedge angle plays an important role in deciding the path difference. Okay, now you also have to notice that at B there is a reflection backed by a denser medium, considering the fact that we have in our case here, in the first case we had drawn I had shown a figure where there was air in between. In the derivation part, I have taken a figure where there is a film of a certain refractive index in between. Okay, so the reflection at B is backed by a denser medium, so that you have to apply Stokes' law, and the value of the path difference is this. This was the geometrically calculated value, and the value after applying Stokes' law is 2 mu t cos of r plus theta plus or minus lambda by 2. Now let us look at this expression and see the consequences. First of all, you get the condition of brightness by equating delta to n lambda, and this is the condition of brightness. Next, you get the condition of darkness by equating delta to n plus minus half lambda, so that this is the condition of darkness. Okay, you have to note over here that if you put the wedge angle theta to 0, what does that mean? If you put theta to 0, it means that the glass plates are parallel, and you get the conditions exactly as we have derived for parallel film interference. Okay, so this is the, you can consider that the wedge shaped case is the general case, where if you put the value of the wedge angle theta to be 0, you get the results as we have discussed thoroughly in the thin parallel film case. Okay, for t equal to 0, where is t equal to 0? T is equal to 0 at the corner where the two planes meet. Okay, let's go back to the. So the thickness is T, where we have assumed that at this particular point the value of the point at which we are considering the reflection, the value of the thickness is T, but you have to keep in mind that this T is a variable parameter now. In the thin parallel case, T was a constant. The film was of uniform thickness throughout. In a wedge-shaped film, the T is no longer a constant. It is a variable parameter. The value of T is 0 at the corner, and it gradually increases to a maximum value at the other boundary. Okay, so when you put T equal to 0 in the expression of path difference, we see that the path difference is just equal to plus or minus lambda by 2. Okay, now when path difference is plus or minus lambda by 2, it indicates that there is a phase difference of pi, and that will always ensure that at this corner a dark fringe will form at all times. Okay, whatever be the angle of inclination, whatever be the final thickness of the film, whatever be the wedge angle, The expression of path difference shows that at the point at which the thickness of the film is 0, the path difference is equal to plus or minus lambda by 2, which indicates a phase difference of pi between the interfering rays, and therefore at this point there is always a dark fringe. Okay. Now for parallel beam of incident monochromatic light, when the incident monochromatic light is a parallel beam, we know that mu, theta, r and lambda are all constants. If you are not changing the angle of inclination, the angle of reflection will not change, and so that in this case mu, theta, r and lambda are all constants. So for a particular order, the fringe nature will depend entirely on the value of T, the thickness of the film. Okay, so the point at which you are making your observation, whether that point will at that point a dark fringe will be formed or a bright fringe will be formed will be entirely decided by the thickness of the film at that point, because all the other parameters are constants. Okay, so the fringe thus formed along the shape will take the shape for a particular fixed value of T. Can you guess what the shape of the film will be? Can someone guess what the shape of this film will be? One particular film is formed for a given thickness of the wedge. For a given thickness, a given fringe will form, because that is the only changing parameter. If you change T, the fringe will change. So can you guess? Any guesses? Any guesses? যা খুশি যা হোক একটা বলো না, তারপরে তো আমি তো আছি কারেক্ট করে দেওয়ার জন্য। Take a wild guess. Are you with me in the class? Hello. Am I audible? At least say yes or no to that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
হ্যাঁ, তাহলে গেস করা যাচ্ছে না? আমি এক্ষুনি যদি শেপটা দেখাই তোমরা বলবে আহা তাই তো। ওকে, সো আই উইল শো ইউ।
গ্রেডিয়েন্ট লাইক হবে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
গ্রেডিয়েন্ট লাইক মানে ধরুন পয়েন্টের কাছে যেহেতু t ইকুয়ালস টু 0 হচ্ছে, সেখানে লাইটটা বেশি, মানে ব্রাইট ফ্রিঞ্জ। আর
সেখানে ব্রাইট ফ্রিঞ্জ না, t ইকুয়াল টু 0 তে কি করে ব্রাইট ফ্রিঞ্জ? t ইকুয়াল টু 0 তে পাথ ডিফারেন্সটা ল্যামডা বাই 2, ডার্ক ফ্রিঞ্জ।
ডার্ক ফ্রিঞ্জ, এবার ডার্ক ফ্রিঞ্জ থেকে যতটা আমি উপরে উঠবো তত তো ফেজ ডিফারেন্স, পাথ ডিফারেন্সটা কমবে। সেই ক্ষেত্রে আমার ব্রাইট ফ্রিঞ্জ মানে গ্রেডিয়েন্ট লাইক মানে ডার্ক ফ্রিঞ্জ থেকে আস্তে আস্তে ফ্রিঞ্জ হবে।
আমি দেখাচ্ছি। For a particular, so see, this is the edge where path difference is 0 and a dark fringe is formed. So at a particular t, when t changes from 0, it will give a different value of delta. For another t, it will give a different value of delta. So as you go to the different values of t, the value of delta will change, so that the position will be either of a bright fringe or of a dark fringe. Now T means it is along a line on the wedge. So the fringes will be parallel lines formed like this.
ম্যাডাম ওই টিটা যখন ভ্যারি করছে তখন এই ফ্রিঞ্জ উইথটার কোনো এফেক্ট পড়বে না?
ফ্রিঞ্জ উইথ তো আমরা ক্যালকুলেট করছি না, ফ্রিঞ্জ উইথ তো পরের ব্যাপার, ফ্রিঞ্জের শেপটা কি হবে সেটা আগে দেখি। For a given order, I should have actually written down the expression of see, this is the expression, this is the condition of brightness or darkness, right? So suppose for n equal to 0, t equal to 0, so we get a dark fringe because we have the path difference at t equal to 0 is lambda by 2. So we get a dark fringe. Now, as the value of t changes, we will get different values of delta, and depending on whether delta equal to n lambda or delta equal to n plus minus half lambda, that will give you a position of a bright fringe or a dark fringe. Now, along how is the fringe formed? T will be the same along such a straight line. So for a given t, all along this straight line, one particular fringe will be formed, and that is either a dark fringe or a bright fringe. When you change t, another fringe will form, and that again along a straight line. And so for each value of t, you will get either a dark fringe along a straight line or a bright fringe along a straight line. Okay, so the nature of the fringes depends on the thickness of the film and not on anything else. Okay, so in this case, earlier we saw that the nature of the fringes depend on the angle of inclination. In this case, we see that the nature of the fringes depend on the thickness of the film, and such fringes are called Fizeau fringes. Okay, in the parallel film case, we saw fringes that were obtained were called Heidinger fringes. In this case, we get fringes that are called Fizeau fringes. Okay, so this is the three-dimensional view which shows you how the fringes will be formed. Now I come to your point. What is the spacing between two consecutive fringes? Okay, so we assume that the wedge angle is extremely small. We make this assumption based on experimental fact that we will discuss when we will be discussing Newton's rings. Okay, for the time being, just assume that the wedge angle is very small, theta tends to 0, so we have a very thin wedge, and cos theta is therefore 1. We can take cos theta to be approximately equal to 1. Okay, and if you consider normal incidence, the rays are incident on the wedge normally, then angle of incidence I equal to 0, so that R is also equal to 0. When rays are incident normally on the surface, they are also transmitted normally, so that the value of I and R are 0. Okay, so in that case, the path difference, which was 2 mu t cos of theta plus r, becomes equal to 2 mu t. All right. So for the bright fringe, we had 2 mu t plus minus, we have 2 mu t plus minus lambda by 2 equal to n lambda. So that 2 mu t is equal to n minus plus half lambda. And for dark fringe, we have 2 mu t equal to n lambda. Okay. So when we are considering a very thin edge where the wedge angle is very, very small, so that cos theta can be assumed to be 1, and we consider normal incidence, then the condition of obtaining bright and dark fringes boil down to these two relations. Okay, so incident light and this is the path difference. So these are the conditions of bright and dark fringes. So suppose a dark fringe of order n is formed at a distance xn from the point of contact. All right, this is the distance xn as indicated in the figure. So at this point, we can say tan theta is equal to Tn by xn, where Tn is the thickness of the fringe at that particular point. All right. So Tn is equal to xn tan theta, and since theta tends to 0, we can say Tn is approximately equal to xn theta. All right. So in this condition of dark fringe, we can write 2 mu xn theta equal to n lambda. All right. Similarly, for the next dark fringe, the dark fringe that is formed after this, that is the not the bright fringe that is adjacent to this. I'm talking about the dark fringe that comes after the bright fringe. So the n plus 1th dark fringe, we can similarly write the relation as 2 mu x n plus 1 theta equal to n plus 1 lambda. Okay. So if you take the difference between these two, then you get the thickness of the fringe in between. So we can see from these two that xn plus 1 minus xn is lambda by 2 mu theta. So the fringe width is lambda by 2 mu theta. For monochromatic rays, lambda is a constant. For a given film, mu is a constant, and for a given wedge, theta is a constant. So you can see that the fringes, and similarly for the bright fringes too, you can calculate and see that beta is equal to lambda by 2 mu theta. So for a given setup, since lambda, mu and theta remain constant, so you see that the fringes are of equal width. Okay. So in case of wedge-shaped film, we see that the fringes are formed at a particular value of thickness of the wedge, and they are straight lines formed along a given thickness as shown in this figure. And if we consider a special case where we have ensured normal incidence so that I and R are 0, and if the thickness, if the wedge angle is very, very small, so that theta tends to 0, giving us cos theta equal to 1 and tan theta tends to theta, then we can put these values in the expressions of the path difference to show that the distance between two consecutive films is beta equal to lambda by 2 mu theta, both for dark and for bright fringes. Okay. So the thickness of the fringes are equal. These are fringes of equal width, alternate bright and dark fringes. These are called Fizeau fringes. And an anecdote over here, that this method is often used to measure extremely small wedge angles or thickness of a film. You know, a thin sheet of paper which is inserted as a spacer in the wedge. This experiment is actually there in your syllabus. You are asked to find the thickness of a thin sheet of paper. If you were to do this, you know, in the laboratory, which unfortunately you will not be doing in this semester also, if you were to do it, you would be just handed an A4 sheet of paper. You would be given a wedge-shaped film, and when you would have taken the wedge in the hand, you would see why I am saying theta tends to 0. The wedge angle is so small. And then you would put the paper inside the wedge so that it forms the film, and you would put it under a traveling microscope and measure the positions of the fringes to get the values of, you know, these xn's and xn plus 1s, and then finally find out the fringe width taking the difference and then equate it to lambda by 2 mu theta. Okay, so that using the formula you can either be asked to find the value of theta, the wedge angle, or the thickness of the thin sheet of paper. Okay, so this is a method that is used, and in fact, unfortunately, you would have done it in the laboratory had this situation been otherwise. All right, but this is there in your paper, practical paper, which is why I explained it to you elaborately, so that you will have to write a practical paper, and there you can use this reference to understand the theory portion of the paper. All right, is it okay with you? Okay, so after this comes Newton's rings, but what is the time now? I have another 5 minutes. Okay, I'll just talk a little bit about Newton's rings and then leave the class. Or actually, I think I'll stop today because it's my fault. I did not inform Ria ma'am about my class today.